Hi, this is Sheila. Welcome back to my channel, She Keeping It Real. I want to talk to you today about something that I have been thinking about over the last couple of weeks. It was the conversation that I had with my youngest son when he was in middle school. And I think parents around the world has probably had a similar conversation. But as you can see, I have a jar in front of me. I don't know if you can tell what's in the jar, but there's stones in the jar. And I want you to tell me, what is the first thing you notice when you look in the jar? Um, Probably the black stone. Well, this is an example I used when my youngest son was in middle school, and it was something that I came up with after an incident of one of many happened, but I think we were all at our last wits end, last straw, whatever you call it. But this particular incident happened when he was in middle school. I'll just tell you about one that stood out that he still talks about to this day. We still talk about. But I have to give you a little background story. So my children, I went to schools in the and exclusively suburban areas of Henderson here in Nevada. We were fortunate enough to live in the neighborhood where they could attend some of the best schools. But that also came with a set of um, underlining issues. I'll put it that way. And so it was just a handful of African American. I'm just going to be blunt with you. I'm keeping it real. A handful of African American children in this middle school, and my two being the handful. So this one particular incident, they were walking home from school, and my youngest was with a group of his friends, probably predominantly white, because at that time, he that's who lived in the neighborhood. That's who they played with. They were walking home from school, and some kids were accused of throwing rocks at a car. And I don't know if the person in the car went back to the school and got someone of authority. I don't really know all the details. I don't remember all the details. That happened so long ago. But anyway, the assistant principal proceeded to catch up with my son and his group of friends, and just immediately grabbed my son by the collar and snatched him back and accused him of being the one to throw the rocks. No one saw my son throw any rocks. No one said he threw any rocks. And the disturbing part was, it wasn't until one of his white friends, who was the same age, so he probably was about 10, 11 also. It wasn't until one of his, I think it was one or two, said that it wasn't my son who was throwing the rocks, that assistant principal let up on my son. Angry is an understatement, but back then we dealt with so many issues that we weren't, going up to the school acting belligerent or ignorant or anything like that. We, really wanted to know some concrete answers on why was this occurring. And of course, they apologized and all that stuff, but it still did not, it did not answer why was these issues occurring. But my immediate concern was my son's mental health, because I saw that things like this was taken away from his spirit, and I refused to let that happen. So one of the things I did was I went out to the desert. I didn't know what to do. I was in mama bear mode, but I really had to grab my son where he was and just make sure that his spirits weren't broken. They were being broken, but I was determined that I was not going to let that happen. So this is one of the demonstrations that we did, and I explained to him that, even in this little, if you look at the jar, there's some rough rocks in here, some big white rocks, some rough white rocks, and that little black rock is not even that big. But the first thing you notice is that black rock, and that's how I explained racism to him. And it was a sad day for me. I think I recall going in my room and really probably crying, because you could see this little kid who was a very smart kid, very intellectual, and you could just see his spirit being broken by adults that knew better. You know, at least I give them the benefit of the doubt that I hope they knew better, but I don't think they understood or probably didn't care how it was affecting my son's spirit. But anyway, I want to really talk about, what can we as parents do? Because I heard a famous quote, and I'm probably going to mess this quote up. I've been trying to find it. I believe Al Sharpton said it, but he said that if someone knocks you down, shame on them. But if they come back and you still down, shame on you. Because if you expect the person that knocked you down to pick you up, they wouldn't have knocked you down in the first place. And that quote has always stuck with me. I don't know if I'm quoting it exactly right, but the reason I'm saying it is that we as parents have to do our part. And one thing that I did do at the time is I said, okay, what can I do to really make sure my children grow up with strong, self-esteem? And one of the things I did was I wasn't working. I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom, but I became a parent volunteer. I became a parent volunteer at that school, and I was up there probably as much as a paid teacher. I was up there so much that I dug into the box. I wanna hide out the name of the school because I don't want y'all to call them out. But I was a parent volunteer because I was not going to just sit back and let my children be treated with discrimination or anything of that matter. Also, some of the things that I did do is I make sure that my children, even though they grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, went to predominantly white schools, I made sure they went to a predominantly black church. And I got them involved in all type of activities. They were in the choir, they were on the step team, they were on the sign team. We did all type of activities. We went to church, we went to Bible study. I made sure that my children had a positive self-image about themselves based on Christ. And I think that really I know that made a difference in how they came out of, really, because sometimes you can, you think you're doing your children, a service by sending them to the best schools, but you can't just send them to those schools and say, okay, my job is done. We're fortunate enough to send them to the best schools. They're going to be all right. No, you got to really stay involved in their lives, check in on their mental stability and how they're doing. Are they being treated fairly by the children in the neighborhood? Yeah, we've arrived, but we've never arrived. Look what we're going through now with George Floyd. Do I think things are going to change? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of good already coming out of it, and a lot good will come. But as far as racism, I'm not going to be naive and think that's just going to go away, because when you look at social media and how some of these people are so visceral when they're attacking people of color, that's in your heart. Some of that hatred is deep down in someone's heart. And I applaud my white friends that are having these conversations in their families. I think that is a step in the right direction. But they know they got some family members that they gonna die. They gonna go to their grave hating people of color for whatever reason, and there's nothing they can do about it. But I deplore them, just like we're building up the self-esteem of our African-American children. I deplore my white friends and family and people out there to teach your children love. Teach them to love everybody. That hatred is taught. And I think if we get at the grassroots, start, the foundation, where they're babies, that we all, can live in this world. God made enough for all of us to prosper and do well and be successful and raise our children. And that's all we're asking for. So, this was a metaphor I had to use back in the 90s, and some parents may still be doing something similar to this.
For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the way God's universe is made. This is the way it is structured. John Donne caught it years ago and placed it in graphic terms. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And he goes on toward the end to say, any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. Therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. We must see this, believe this, and live by it.